Hello everyone, my name is Dominik Rudolph. I would like to welcome you to a new webinar from Streifeneder. As you can easily see, it's about our offloading shoes, therapeutic approaches and, of course, how to prevent the development of new wounds. In terms of the target group, it's about international sales on the one hand, but also about orthopedic technology, orthopedic footwear and podiatry. Yes, what we want to convey is a clear view of the pathology, but also how our therapeutic shoes are adapted and how we want to adapt them to the wearer or user. Yes, these offloading shoes here are called something completely different abroad. In other countries, for example, they are called wound care shoes. These shoes are not only used for offloading, but also for mobilization. In other words, these are the first shoes to get you walking again once the wound has been treated. Of course, this is only an interim solution. This interim solution will be discontinued once the wound has healed and people can wear normal shoes or orthopedic shoes again. Yes, for the sake of completeness, we would like to give you a kind of indication list when these shoes can be used. In addition to the indications, we also need to talk about contraindications because these shoes cannot be used for all wounds, of course, but only for certain ones. And these shoes will be discussed in detail. A few words about contraindications, as discussed earlier. The purpose of therapeutic shoes is of course to relieve the pressure on the wound. If the wound cannot be completely relieved, other aids must of course be used. For example, relief orthoses, as you can see here in the pictures. Yes, to give a complete overview of our therapy shoes, we would like to start here with the surgical shoes. Here you can see all surgical shoes from our therapy shoe range. Far left, let's start with the model Neptune. As you can see here, this is a classic home shoe. This surgical shoe can be opened all the way to the front. This means that caregivers or older people who find it difficult to put on their shoes can open them completely and close them again easily using the hook and loop fastener. These shoes are feather light and have no noticeable seams inside. This means that if someone has minor injuries on their foot or toes and is wearing a light wound dressing or even a compression bandage, they are in good hands with the Neptune surgical shoe. Next to it you can see the Neptune B. B stands for wide. This means that if the dressing is a little more voluminous, a cotton wool dressing for example, then of course I need a lot more volume, and you can see that here, especially in the toe box area. There is of course a lot of space and the shoe can be of course be closed on the forefoot just like the normal Neptune. The Neptune B can also be adjusted at the back of the heel. This means that if the heel bone is very prominent, it can be adjusted again or the ankle is very narrow or small. Then of course I can close the shoe well. These shoes are often used for people who, for example, have very swollen feet, who have elephantiasis, who have some kind of ulcer cruris, where large, bulky dressing are needed. This shoe is just right. If we turn our attention to the back of the shoe, we can see that the shoe has different gray zones. These gray zones are made of a softer foam, in other words, a softer rubber. This means that they ensure that you have a secure step, you don't slip sideways here. And these are so-called anti-slip zones, and they are wonderfully integrated here. This means that they provide more stability. Another model is our Luna. Similar to the Neptune B, the Luna has the same outsole. Here the anti-slip zones and a nice rollover, but overall it's built like a sandal. This means that when you open the shoe, you can open it completely and put your foot in and see how big or how wide the foot fits. This so-called cubical cushion sole can be removed. This is an insole where you can remove individual foam cubes, for example, to relieve pressure in certain areas. More on this later. Yes, if the insole is not used, it is also possible to use a customized insole. Here, for example, we see a customized diabetic insole. This consists of several layers and is super soft to accommodate sensitive or injured feet. And, of course, the insole can be used wonderfully here. So now the foot is optimally protected, and if there is still a wound, it can heal off better. Yes, next we will talk about our forefoot relief shoes. These are typical forefoot relief shoes that we've been familiar with for years. Here, for example, the Venus model has a shortened outsole, but also a shortened cushion sole. These shoes are mainly used post-surgically. In other words, if you have a wound on the forefoot, for example, if something has fallen on your forefoot or your toenail has become ingrown. This model is often used for this. You can see the holes on the side. These holes are used to attach a protective bar. This protective bar then serves as a kind of a bumper to protect the forefoot. And the inclined position, because of the body weight, is on the heel, can relieve the forefoot. This shoe, also the others, are never used for diabetics. They are mainly used post-surgically, so people who have a good sense of balance and can stand safely. The other models you can see here, for example the Merkur in the center. The Merkur has a complete padded sole here. If you take it out, you can clearly see that the cubical cushion padded sole is also built in. And the fitting, we will see that later. Yes, the shoe on the backside. Here you can see the shortened outsole. It also has these anti-slip spots for better stability. Here too, my body weight is clearly on the heel, the forefoot is positioned more upwards, and this provides relief. And this allows the injury on the forefoot or the wound caused by the operation to heal better. Over here we have the Jupiter model. The Jupiter also comes with a forefoot strap. I can open this forefoot strap completely just to prevent a possible lateralization. This means that these shoes are designed for left and right. This means that if the right or left foot is treated, they have the tendency to shift laterally when used. And this forefoot strap prevents this. Yes, of course, this shoe is only used post-surgically and not for diabetics. So the tip for safety? Unfortunately, these shoes are very wobbly. This means that if you put weight on them, this will happen. This means that someone walking around with such a forefoot relief shoe must be able to stand and walk safely. In other words, as soon as he tries to roll over, he tilts forwards, and everyone can imagine that if the forefoot is injured as a result of the operation, for example, the result of the operation is more likely to be disturbed and the healing is disturbed. That's why these shoes should unfortunately be treated with some caution. That's why you should also use crutches to simply create more safety and to have more relief on the forefoot. Yes, let's move on to the second part of the forefoot relief shoes. These shoes that you see here are the shoes that are more suitable for diabetics. In other words, if the wounds are caused by diabetes mellitus and require an appropriate pressure relief on the forefoot. Here on the left you can see the Uranus model. The Uranus has a wide tongue that opens forwards. It looks like this. This shoe can even be fastened at the ears with a gripping aid. This is very practical, especially if you find it difficult to bend down. And that's why it only has a hook and loop fastener. Characteristic of all these shoes is the wide sole, which is slightly narrower at the back than at the front. This means that the foot is adjusted in a more negative position overall. This means that the body weight is more on the heel than on the forefoot, which provides me with this relief. This sole is completely stiff overall. In other words, the foot and toe joints are relieved, and this shape is responsible for the rolling motion. In other words, I have a good rollover area here, which is nicely rounded. And now, of course, rolling over is much easier as seen in all these shoes. As you can see here, we have these anti-slip zones. This means that on slippery floors, in the bathroom or when it's wet somewhere, I simply have more stability in the mid-stance phase. Overall, the shoes are again super softly padded. Everything is soft on the inside. If you open it up again, here I can take out this cubical cushion sole on the inside. In a later video, we also show how to fit them. So it's all very easy, and it's good that it comes together. Yes, the other model here is almost identical in construction to this model, again like the Uranus model. This is the Merkur A. In comparison to this large 4-foot tongue, the Merkur A has a hook and loop fasteners with deflectors. This means if I need a better hold, I can work with these fasteners and deflectors. In other words, they are threaded in like this, and then I can of course put them on here and have a very good hold on the instep of the foot. Of course, it's one of those things because threading is not easy for everyone. And that's why there are two versions. One with this wide 4-foot tongue and hook and loop fasteners, and the other one with additional hook and loop fasteners and deflectors. Yes, here we have the Pluto S model. Pluto S stands for stability. This shoe can be opened like a sandal. That means I can open the shoe completely. I'll show you very briefly. All the hook and loop fasteners are pulled through, and I can even open it completely at the heel. This means that if the injured foot is inserted here, I can adapt the shoe upper to the anatomy of the foot. In other words, here the shoe upper is closed at the heel then. And then the hook and loop fasteners are taken here and threaded into the deflectors and closed here, so you can see it clearly. And perhaps it's important to mention again that these fasteners can also of course also be unthreaded. That means that they are also available as spare parts. Or depending on which side of the foot I have, either left or right, I can then turn the fasteners round and adjust them to the left or right side. Okay, as with the other shoes, there's a 4-foot strap as discussed earlier with the 4-foot relief shoes. This Pluto S model also has a 4-foot strap. This 4-foot strap prevents the lateral shift, because as we discussed, these shoes are designed for left and right. And with this 4-foot strap we prevent lateralization. Yes, let's move on to our post-OP shoes. The two models you see here. On the left you see the Comet, on the right you see the Apollo. When we talk about the Comet, it's a classic post-OP shoe with a square sole. This square outsole is made, for example, if there is a Kirschner wire stuck in the bone of the forefoot. And it is important that this square sole is a kind of a bumper to protect the forefoot from external influences. Overall, this shoe is very light and has also a reinforced outer sole. This means that I have a nice rollover and the forefoot is further relieved by its overall stiffness. In general, this shoe has an effective heel height of just 10 mm. This means I don't need any elevation or compensation for the sound side. That's why this shoe can be worn with normal shoes without any problems. Okay, what else is there to say? I can open the shoe completely. This means that if you open the hook and loop fasteners here, the shoe can be opened completely like a sandal. This is what it looks like. And I can also remove this insole here. Here you can see on the backside that these foam cubes can be removed to provide localized relief. In other words, it's a great solution for post-surgical care and is used very frequently. Well, on the right-hand side, as already mentioned, you can see the Apollo. The Apollo is a real specialist. This Apollo uses the so-called zero heel technique, which means that this particular shape of the outer sole allows me to roll forwards. This is where I roll forwards during the rollover process. And when I swing through, I don't have to lift my forefoot because I don't have an edge here. This means that the shoe provides relief in stance phase, but also in swing phase. And we have also proven this technically. A few years ago, we carried out an examination in our gait laboratory and filmed the forefoot, specifically the large joint on the inside, barefoot, with a real forefoot relief shoe, and here with the Apollo. And it turned out that this shoe really relieves the forefoot and stance phase, but also in swing phase. And that's why this is a great way to relieve the forefoot here. Okay, you can see a few pictures in the appendix. On the one hand, what a forefoot correction looks like, a hallux valgus operation, but also a few slow motion videos of how we did our examinations for the Apollo. So I think we have some really great specialists in our range. Yes, so far we have mainly focused on injuries on the forefoot. Now we need to look at injuries to the heel. What you see here are two models for heel relief. One is the Mars model and the other is the Mars S model. Both models are designed to relieve pressure at the heel. Because when there are wounds here, for example, we have brought a few pictures with us so we can see it quite clearly. It is important to completely relieve the foot, especially with the model here, the Mars. Also constructed like a sandal. You can also open it completely. I'll show you that very briefly. This means that if you take out the hook and loop fasteners again, this shoe can be opened completely. And here you can clearly see the so-called midfoot roll, which simply provides support. This is exactly where the foot rests, onto the medial arch. And the heel is then completely free to create relief. Of course, if you take the weight off the heel, the midfoot, and also you have to put some weight onto the forefoot. This means that people who walk with the shoe will walk more on their forefoot. That's why this sole is also very softly padded to absorb any possible pressure points. However, the aim is to completely relieve the heel, so that the wound can heal. Another option for relieving the heel is the Mars S model. The Mars S can be opened in the same way as the Mars. It is constructed like a sandal. And here it can be opened completely with the hook and loop fastener. This is what it looks like. Now you can put your foot onto nicely. And if you look inside here, it doesn't have a midfoot roll compared to the normal Mars. You can see the pad on the inside here. And if I take out this padded insole, I can also take out this pad. This pad can be grinded, or you can also build it up, glue onto something to make it higher. And you can also turn it the other way around. In other words, I can adapt this shoe from the left to the right, depending on which side of foot is affected. In another way, this padding can be adjusted accordingly. What I mean, if I now have to think about exactly how the left foot needs to be relieved, for example, I can turn the pad here and then insert the padded insole again. So now this shoe has been customized for the left foot side. Okay, then the foot is put onto and then I can close the shoe easily. You always start with the heel and then work your way to the instep. Close the hook and loop fastener here again. And then close the forefoot straps here at the end. So that means we have two models, the Mars and the Mars S, and both serve to completely relieve the heel. Here's the one with the long sole padding, and here's the open one. Yes, we have already heard a lot about our therapeutic shoes. And the last of the bunch is the balance shoe. This is a height compensation shoe. What is used because, of course, if you wear a forefoot relief shoe, for example, it is relatively high at the heel. In other words, if you were to walk without a compensation, you would stand relatively crooked. I think that we will be able to show this well in another video later on. It's important to avoid a pelvic obliquity so that there is no difference in leg length. That's why we have this height compensation shoe, to create the balance from the forefoot relief shoe to the sound side, so that we have an even pelvis level in the end. This is an important point, because if you walk on one side, you walk very unsteadily. but if the height is compensated, it's best to use a balanced shoe like the one we see here. This makes walking easier overall. Yes, in detail these shoes are built similar to the other therapy shoes. Here is the stiffened outer sole, a nice roll over, here again the anti-slip spots, the removable cubicle cushion sole. All hook and loop fasteners are easy to open and close. This shoe can even be adjusted at the heel. This means that you can optimally adjust the shoe, the balanced shoe, to the appropriate side so that both sides are completely level, so that you can walk better, easier and more comfortable. Okay, yes, before we come to the end, I'd like briefly summarize what we've heard today about Streifeneder therapeutic shoes. I'm holding the Comet model in my hands as an example. Very light overall, stiffened sole with a profile or even with these anti-slip zones as we saw earlier, to provide greater stability. The inside is antibacterial. This is very important, especially in hospitals, as many models have a removable insole. Most of them also have a cubicle cushion insole where you can remove individual foam cubes. Everything is incredibly well thought out, no noticeable seams on the inside, a stable heel counter to keep the heel well in place, indeed to open it completely. I think I have already said everything what is still important to me. When such therapeutic shoes are fitted, perhaps as a kind of a take-home message, is that you should be present when the wound dressing is changed, because it is important when the dressing is removed that you have a clear view of the problem and then the right shoe can be selected. And as we also know, with the indications and contraindications, it is always important to fit the right model and not one that the user doesn't get on well with. In other words, be there, take a close look so that the right model is selected. Okay, yes, we are at the end. Thank you very much for joining us. That was the webinar on therapy shoes. If you have any further questions, please visit our webpage or contact our sales team, who are here to answer all your questions. Otherwise, I can only say goodbye. Thank you.